It's time for us to start. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, wherever you are joining us from. You are all welcome to day 2 of the Colloquium on Transhumanism in Africa, questioning the concept of radical enhancement of humans' moral capacities. My name is Amara Esther Chimakonam. I'm a postdoc at the Center for Phenomenology in South Africa. I organized this colloquium, and I'll also be your moderator for today. This colloquium is organized in collaboration with the Center for Phenomenology in South Africa and the Conversational School of Philosophy. So today we'll be having 5 lectures. And this is how we'll proceed. Our speakers have 20 to 25 minutes for their lectures, and we'll take the first lecture, then the Q&A. We'll take the second and third lectures, then the Q&A, then we'll finally take the 4th and 5th lectures together, then the Q&A. Please, I plead with us to mute ourselves as we join this event, and for us to also stick to time so that we'll have enough room for question, answers, and contribution and engagement. So without taking much of our time, I would like to invite Professor Jonathan Chimakonam, who is the president of the Conversational School of Philosophy, to give a 5-minute opening remarks on behalf of the Conversational School of Philosophy. Professor Jonathan, please, you can have the floor. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. The moderator and everyone who has been able to join us today. It is a great pleasure for me, on behalf of the Conversational School of Philosophy, to welcome you all and to open today's event. Transhumanism is one of the new areas that African philosophy is yet to really get fully represented. And we are happy that this event is being organized to serve as an opportunity for African philosophers to take interest in this important field and to grow the discipline by adding literature that will serve as fodder for engagements on the topic. So thank you very much, Amara, for putting together this event, and the Center for Phenomenology in South Africa for collaborating this event. CSP represents, it's a frontliner in the advancement and development of African philosophy as a discipline, and is once again very proud to associate this very important event today. So, my son and I welcome all of you to this great debate, and hope that the presentations in this colloquium will be, published in print to increase the literature on the subject, as well as encourage established and emerging scholars to also join the field of transhumanism. Thank you very much, and let the conversation begin. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Jonathan, for this interesting opening remarks. Kindly note that this the recording of this event will be posted on the CSP YouTube channel for educational purposes. And also, due to time, I will not be reading out the bio of the speakers in detail. I will briefly introduce them. So the first lecture we are supposed to take for today. I can see Abdul is here with us. So let me quickly introduce him again so that he will go and goes straight to his lecture. So Mr. Abdul will be speaking to us today on transhumanism, singularity, and Afrofuturism. Mr. Abdul is a Nigerian scholar, futurist, and philosophy lecturer at Kogi State University, Nigeria. In line with his pragmatic approach towards linking futurist philosophical ideas with action, Mr. Abdul engages in a series of organizational activism that include his roles as co-founder, Enlightenment Transhumanist Forum of Nigeria, founder Transhumanist Africa, among others. He is a member of the Conversational School of Philosophy and the Center for Transhumanist Studies. He has published widely on transhumanism and African futures, and also given lectures in different conferences. Mr. Abdul, please, we are eager to hear your interesting lecture. Thank you. Mr. Abdul, we can hear you.
Okay, hope I'm audible now. Can you hear me now?
Yes, you are. We can hear you.
Okay, and can you see my slides also?
Yes, perfectly well.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Dr. Amara Esther Chimakonam, for the honor of inviting me to be a speaker at this colloquium. And I also wish to express my congratulations to the Conversational School of Philosophy for successfully putting this event together. For my talk this morning, I will be doing more of making notes on some conceptual issues concerning transhumanism, singularity, and Afrofuturism, and as well advance some of my notions as to how the project of transhumanism in Africa and the idea of African futures may be pursued. So just for some background, starting from the late 90s, from the early 90s into the early 2000s, a paradigm shift began around a way of a thinking with regards to human nature. And this paradigm shift began among some computer scientists, some neuroscientists, some nanotechnologists, some biotechnologists around the idea of human nature. Now, before then, what had been prevalent was that human nature was not up for grabs. Human nature was something fixed. We could modify our tools, we could modify institutions, we could modify cultures, we could modify systems, but human nature was not something that could be modified or changed. It was seen as something immutable, going back to some ancient philosophies. We talk about human essence, something fixed. All right, but around that period of the 90s into the early 2000s, some of these computer scientists, some of these biotechnologists, neuroscientists were also looking into some influences coming from evolutionary biology about the fact that human nature actually is something malleable, something that is not fixed, something that can change. And also ideas from such schools as existentialism, postmodernism. So this paradigm shifts opened the way to a new form of thinking that human nature is something improvable, human nature is something malleable. And going back through history, you find that little additions like language, like printing, like engines, like modern medicine have one way or the other brought significant changes to how people live their lives, to who people are and what they are, according to Bostrom. So when you compare that to what at the late 90s and early 2000s were becoming new vistas of technological possibilities, there was a readiness to start seeing human nature as something that could still undergo more fundamental changes in line of the new technologies that were being promised. Now, a philosophy emerged around this time known as transhumanism, which has been gaining currency as a new name for that new way of thinking, which challenges the notion that the human condition is essentially unalterable. This new philosophy of transhumanism made it possible for people to start thinking about new landscapes of dazzling possibilities. There could be risks along the line, but there was also so much wonderful promises ahead. From that late 90s into the early 2000s, this philosophy started growing, and then from a fringe movement, it has spread around the world and become a philosophy to be reckoned with. So next, transhumanism. What is it? Here I have some definitions from the transhumanist FAQ, which I will not want to bore us about. But from these definitions, what we can surmise is that transhumanism is a life philosophy, an intellectual and cultural movement, and an area of study. But one central name you can find across these definitions is that desirability, possibility and desirability of improving the human condition through the use of science and technology guided with life promoting principles and applied reason. Next, but still on transhumanism, in recent times, there have been some reactions to transhumanism. And some of these have unfolded in the form of critiques, but also in the form of misinformation or disinformation. And there's a lot out there that people today call transhumanism. And as such, some of the original thinkers of transhumanism, who fortunately are still alive, the likes of Max Moore, the likes of Natasha Vita-Moore, the likes of Nick Bostrom, the likes of Anders Sandberg, the likes of David Wood. Many of them are still alive, and these are the people who crafted, who articulated the original foundational texts, which developed or shaped the philosophy. So these foundational texts could be the Transhumanist FAQ, the Transhumanist Declaration, Max Moore's Philosophy of Transhumanism, Nick Bostrom's Transhumanist Values, and others, or Max Moore's Principles of Extropy. Now, some of these people, like I said, are still alive, and at some point, there is this recent, very, very recent campaign to try and take back transhumanism from what it is not, what some other writers make of transhumanism, but which luckily the original writers, the original thinkers are still around to correct. The most recent is a document called the Transhumanism Affirmation, which you can find on the Humanity Plus website. It was put together by the likes of Max Moore, the likes of Natasha Vita-Moore, David Wood, and my humble self, because I happen to be an advisor at Humanity Plus. So among some of these efforts to redefine or to reclaim transhumanism, there are some notions of what transhumanism is and what it is not. And I will just take the time to go through some of them, because in recent time, I've also come across people who mention things about transhumanism, for which it's not what transhumanism claims. First is that transhumanism is about continual improvement. It is not about perfection or paradise. You go through the original text, the original articulations of transhumanism. What transhumanism is about is this continual improvement of the human condition. Transhumanism doesn't claim to pursue perfection or paradise. Perfection is something brought into the discourse by many opponents of transhumanism, the likes of Francis Fukuyama, the likes of Michael Sandel, and McGibbon, and Wesley Smith. which is more of a straw man, because it's like you misrepresent your opponent's argument in order to falsify it. What transhumanism is after is this notion that the human species can continually be improved. There is no endpoint to the improvement. So when you say perfection, it's like you agree that we've come to an end where no more improvement can take place. We've reached perfection. Transhumanism doesn't make that claim. Transhumanism, going by the principles of entropy, which is like the opposite of entropy, is just this belief that we can continually improve, perpetual progress. That's another word for it. So there is no claim to trying to make humans perfect or trying to achieve paradise for humans or the human condition. Secondly, transhumanism is about improving nature's mindless design and not guaranteeing perfect technological solutions. By nature's mindless design, what is meant here is something akin to what Richard Dawkins would call the blind watchmaker, which is this notion that when you look at nature, for some, because of the presence of complexity among living organisms, some may be tempted to say that complexity is evidence of the existence of an intelligent designer or a creator. Now, from evolutionary biology or from the interpretations of the likes of Richard Dawkins, the complexity among organisms simply happens through random processes of natural selection. All right, organisms can adapt to complex situations, but it's still an outcome of random processes. There is no intelligent mind that is behind any intentionality or purposiveness in nature. So that is what is meant by mindless design. The design there is in quotes to mean that even this design, this sense of maybe complexity of order, still has some force in it. In the human body, we still experience diseases, some of which are 100% natural or come from nature. In the human body, we have autoimmune diseases. Some people are born with congenital disorders. There's the problem of aging, which also comes with making people frail and physical suffering. And this aging process also leads to age-related diseases. All right. So, and then there are several other physical and cognitive limitations that nature imposes on the human condition. Now, for transhumanists or for transhumanism, these are areas of nature's design which can be improved upon. And they could be improved upon using science, using technology, but not towards any form of perfection. It's not towards any perfect technological solutions. It's just this notion that we can take control of the evolutionary process. We can engage in self-directed evolution. But again, it's not any claim towards perfection. It's just continual improvement. The third is transhumanism is about critical rationalism and not omniscient reason or scientism. This again, because it may be alleged that transhumanists have this overarching reverence for the scientific method. To some extent, yeah, transhumanism relies on science, relies on reason, but not to the point of scientism or omniscient reason. Rather, transhumanism builds upon Karl Popper's critical rationalism, which holds that no, you can't just seek recourse to justificationism to say, okay, these views are justified because you can appeal to one authority or the other, be it sense experience, be it intellectual intuition, be it self-evident concepts, or be it religious recourse to religious authority, whether God or holy books. For critical rationalism, we only get to acquire and improve knowledge through conjecture and criticism. So every knowledge claim, every scientific theory, every belief are open to criticism and argumentation and debate. And it is through that through that notion of fallibilism that knowledge grows. So transhumanism is open to this continual questioning, continual re-examination of claims and beliefs, and that fits into the transhumanist drive for continual improvements and the challenging of limits. Fourth is that transhumanism is about morphological freedom, not mechanizing the body. Now, this morphological freedom is one concept which many people seem to lose sight of when discussing transhumanism. But I can say it is at the heart of transhumanism and what should be discourse around transhumanism. Morphological freedom, simply put, is this notion that persons have rights to control their bodies and their minds, or have rights over their bodies and their minds according to their own conscience, in the pursuit of life, liberty, abilities, and happiness. All right. So, and it could take place through different forms. It could take place through pharmacological methods, through neurological methods, through cybernetic methods, through genetic methods. There are diverse ways to pursue morphological freedom. So it is not just about mechanizing the body, because once people hear about transhumanism, the only thing they think about is trying to convert human beings into robots, Terminator-style robots, which is not true. And I think this is, again, another area where I have some issues or disagreement with Dr. Amara Esther Chimakonam's notion of technologized persons. And that's because when these technologized persons is being talked about, it makes it look like this is one new phenomenon of humans here and then technology there, and then trying to bring the two into one entity is something strange or alien, which is not the case, because if you look back into evolutionary theory, you find that technology has always been part of the story of human evolution, in the sense that going back even as far as what archaeological and paleontological records will show us, the transition from Australopithecus, from pre-humans to Homo, to the genus of Homo, coincided with the same time when humans, when you have record of this use of stone tools in the Olduvai Gorge of the Rift Valley of East Africa. And so the use of tools, the use of technology has always been part of that self-realization, that emergence of our genus and our species as Homo sapiens. So for some, if you look at the fact that technology has been part of our cultural evolution all through the millennia, and the fact that as our tools evolve, so also do we evolve, and the fact that some people will argue that going by that coincidence of the emergence of the genus Homo with the use of tools, to mean that the self-definition or the self-understanding of what it means to be human is also technological. All right. So technology has been, as some will put it, our extended phenotype. It's been part of who we are. It's like extensions of ourselves, our memory, our abilities, and all that. So to now come up with a concept that makes it seem like technology is something alien, and then when you introduce it to the human, you now have a new kind of something problematic. It's an area where I have disagreement. Secondly, the notion of technologized persons as like robotic zombies that do not have choices of their own, or that are pre-programmed to carry out actions. This again does not go in line with morphological freedom. Morphological freedom again insists on the choices at the hands of the individual, right, to decide whether to enhance or not to enhance. All right. So, so when individuals decide, according to morphological freedom, because morphological freedom is both negative and positive freedom, you can decide to, or you can decide not to, and there's no coercion for you to either decide to enhance or not to enhance. So when individuals choose to enhance in an open society, which is another principle again from extropy, the open society, when individuals choose to enhance in an open society, which as an open society allows for that rational debate among people and consensus as to what are socially accepted values. And then an individual wants to key up with these socially accepted values and then seeks enhancement of his or her dispositions to be able, to be capable of meeting up with those values. It doesn't mean such an individual has been predetermined, all right? The values are socially accepted. The individual made a choice to key into those values and is only seeking an enhancement of his or her dispositions to meet up with those values. And again, be it in a liberal democratic system or in a consensual democracy, like Dr. Aribe Ato pointed us to Kwasi Wiredu's interpretation of African political system yesterday. So long as this happens within an open society where there is that debate, that consensus, that social agreement as to what are socially accepted values, and then people choose to key into those values and seek enhancement of their dispositions to be able to meet up with those values, then I don't think there's any coercion there or there's any pre-programming there, which again is what distinguishes transhumanism from eugenics. Eugenics being that Nazi totalitarian program of Germany in the 20th century to forcefully reprogram some people according to an idea of a master race. Okay, so we need to get these things, these concepts really, really separated. And then finally, transhumanism is about trying to shape fundamentally better futures, not predicting specific futures. Again,
Mr. Abdul, sorry to
transhumanism
cut
tries to
in.
balance.
Mr. Abdul, sorry
Yeah?
to cut in. Your video is off, please.
Okay, I had to put that off because but I'll put it back on now. I was having some electricity issues.
Okay, okay.
Okay, but I'll be back on now. All right, so finally, transhumanism is about trying to shape fundamentally better futures, not predicting specific futures. Again, you find there's this temptation among some to, for example, the likes of Recoswell who will say, so and so will happen in 2045. All right, now that's not transhumanism kind of talk. Transhumanism is not predicting specific features. It's only, there's this saying that the best way to predict the future is to invent it, all right, to shape it, to work it out, all right? So that's what transhumanism is trying to do, wanting to take control of the process, balance existential risk with existential opportunity, and navigate through several challenges towards better futures, but not predicting specific features. Transhumanism has this way of balancing belief in progress with rational uncertainty about the future. So it's very important we take note of some of these original positions of transhumanism. Next, the singularity. Now, there is I would say a subset of transhumanists who are called singularitarians, all right? And then there is this, of course, there's a relationship between transhumanism and singularity, all right? But they are not coterminous, all right? As some people will want to use both interchangeably. They are not coterminous. The singularity, going from original formulators of the idea, the likes of I.J. Good, John von Neumann, Werner Vinci, Hans Moravich, and then down to Ray Kurzweil. The singularity is this idea that as humans keep developing intelligence, it will get to a time where intelligence itself will enter a runaway cycle, a runaway reaction, and start creating other forms of intelligence. And then there will be an intelligence explosion to a point where super intelligence emerges. And this super intelligence will surpass human intelligence. So for example, now what there is artificial narrow intelligence, but then others are already talking about the possibility of artificial general intelligence, AGI. And then we have possibilities of AI creating AI, all right, or AGI creating another AGI. Now, when this cycle keeps repeating and each one being better than the previous one, each one being an improvement of the previous one, it gets to a point where super intelligence, which should be like the peak of it all, will emerge. And this super intelligence will far surpass human intelligence, and it will like be an end of all human civilization, in the sense that once that super intelligence emerges, humans will no longer need to create anything again, because super intelligence will be able to do more than humans in creating, in solving maths, solving problems, and creating different materials or whatever it is that is needed for life to go on. So that will mark a shift, a transition in civilization. But in Ray Kurzweil's own notion of the singularity involves both that emergence of super intelligence, but also a merger of humans with that super intelligence, a measure of human intelligence with super intelligence. For some, that's the best way or the surest way to avoid the prospect that we see in some dystopian science fiction of machines getting to enslave humans, intelligent machines now turning humans into their slaves or even driving humans into extinction. For the likes of Kurzweil, the most likely scenario in the future will be that merger of humans with machine intelligence. And for him, that is what will be characterized by this singularity, after which the next epoch will be the spread of intelligence across the universe. Now, this singularity, like I said, represents maybe one strand of transhumanist thought, but it is not all there is. It is not the culmination of transhumanism, as some will want to depict it. They are, like I said, first, they are not coterminous. Secondly, it doesn't necessarily follow that transhumanism will culminate in a singularity. The singularity looks at artificial intelligence, super intelligence, and maybe the likely measure of humans with super intelligence. But then there are other strands of transhumanism that simply want to pursue healthy longevity through biomedical, through gene therapies, through biomedical procedures, through reversal of the aging process, all right? Working on ways to stop the biological clock from ticking and stimulating rejuvenation and repair mechanisms in the human body in a way that humans get to live healthier for longer, all right? Life extension, but not necessarily through any measure with machines. This is still part of the transhumanist vision. Some also think that level of super intelligence can be achieved by humans through use of nootropics, through use of pharmaceuticals, some enhancement drugs, all right? And that will bring about a cognitive enhancement or even a super intelligence by humans, but not necessarily through measure with intelligent machines. So even though the singularity is one strand within transhumanism, it doesn't represent all the entirety of the transhumanist vision. There are diverse paths towards what transhumanists are pursuing. So it is not always true that transhumanism will lead or culminate in the singularity. These, to some extent, have even branched out into different communities at the global level. So that's also another area I wanted to clarify about the singularity. Now, moving to Afrofuturism. Afrofuturism, here there are some debates going on which I want to bring to the notice of some of my colleagues, especially my senior colleague, Dr.
Mr. Abdul, we can't hear you.
for Ademola. In his original definition, okay, this is the slide I was looking for. In his original definition by Mark Derry, who is an African American, the definition centers the African American experience, the African American signification, which appropriates images of technology for a prosthetically enhanced feature. And then he said, for want of a better term, we can call this Afrofuturism. Now, because of several deficiencies also found in that term, the term itself have gone through series of revisions, series of reviews, and we now have such terms like Afrofuturism 2.0, Afrofuturism 3.0. All right, but despite that, some Africans who are also within this that world, that genre of writing creative fiction, felt dissatisfied. And in 2018, Mohale Mishigo said there may be a need for Africans to come up with something different from Afrofuturism, but that she will not be the one to coin the phrase. So in 2019, Nnedi Okorafor, who is a Nigerian based in America, but writes a lot of creative fiction, coined the term African futurism, one word, African futurism. And she said, though it is similar to Afrofuturism in the way that Blacks in the continent and Blacks in the diaspora are connected by blood, spirit, history, and future, the difference is that African futurism is specifically and directly rooted in African culture, in African history, in African mythology and point of view, and then it branches out into the diaspora. But it centers first from the African continent. It is from Africa, it is made by Africans, and it is about Africa. Then from there, it can spread out into the African diaspora worldwide. So from that 2019, several other people have started using that term. And for someone like Nnedi Okorafor, she illustrates an example. For those who watched the movie Black Panther, in the movie Black Panther, we found out that at the end, when Wakanda was to build its first outpost, it built this in Oakland, California, USA. Now, for her, that is Afrofuturism because it is centering African Americans or the Blacks in America as the starting point of that discourse. But for her, where it is African futurism is for Wakanda to build its outpost in a neighboring African country. All right. So after that, after she made this definition in the year 2020, sorry, not 2010, an anthology was put together by several African writers, which they call African Futurism, an anthology. And here they try to come up with science fiction stories, come up with stories about African futures, but that are rooted in African traditions of thoughts, African traditions of science, African traditions of philosophy and technology and visions of the future.
Okay, so I'm sorry to cut in again, Mr. Abdul. You have 5 minutes more.
Okay. So I would like to call on my colleagues to consider this term, African futurism, over and against Afrofuturism. Now, where does this all lead? Someone said all of this is just speculative fiction. That is true, but then in history, we see that there's a power of storytelling. The historian philosopher Yuval Harari made this claim that much of human civilization is built upon stories. Our nations, our clans, our tribes, our religions is built upon this human capacity to tell stories and to believe in the stories that we tell. So just the way transhumanism and even emerging technologies that we have in the world today started from science fiction of the 80s and 90s. So also the storytelling of African futurism is necessary for the building of an African version of transhumanism. Again, it is necessary for African philosophers to link up with these African storytellers into reconstructing an African philosophy that will be future-based. And somehow I also look back and I saw a work by Fayemi in 2011 where he proposed the method of hermeneutical reconstructionism. I think that method, which integrates cultural hermeneutics with cultural reconstructionism, will also provide a sound platform for African philosophers to work with African writers in African futurism to create a basis from which an African transhumanism can take root. Now, when this collaboration takes place, I think eventually our young innovators, our young scientists, our young engineers in Africa should be brought into the discussion so that they will have that creative imagination, that inspiration, all right, to develop indigenous technologies, but that are also futuristic. And I think through that collaboration between the African philosopher, the African writer, bringing out African futurism, and collaborating with our engineers and our policymakers, like somebody rightfully pointed out yesterday, Africa can leapfrog and join the fourth industrial revolution. It is more of a belief in the power of storytelling, creative imagination, but also hard work. But I think if you follow this path, Africa can also have an African transhumanism and can also have the basis being part of the fourth industrial revolution in the 21st century. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Abdul, for this thought-provoking lecture. Thank you. Okay, the floor is now open for questions, contributions, and comments. Please, if you have any, kindly raise your hand up, then I will call you to unmute yourself and ask your question. So, okay, we have one here. Umezuike, please kindly unmute yourself and ask your question. But before you do that, Mr. Abdul, please, can you stop sharing? So that...
Yeah, let me do that.
Thank you so much. Okay, Umezuike.
Okay, thank you. The last presenter, the first and the last presenter for that wonderful presentation. I think in the course of your presentation, you seem to have disagreed with Fukuyama, you know, and his position that transhumanism is moving towards perfection. And I want to say something here. And when we talk about kind of modification, if we agree that transhumanism is all about modification, a kind of transformation, so to speak, then I believe transforming to where? To perfect what probably has been done that we feel is not really in order. So I think transhumanism for me is a movement towards perfection. I think I agree with Fukuyama in that regard. So, but again, my question is very simple to you. I want to ask, what are the theological and biological implications of transhumanism and singularity? That is for Abdul. Then for the first speaker, our philosopher queen, in the course of using Ubuntu to look at the issue of transhumanism, I think there is a little disconnect there. The disconnection is the fact that Ubuntu is a kind of communalistic in nature, while that of transhumanism is talking about self-transformation. And if transhumanism is all about self...
Dr. Umezuike, please, can you go straight to the point, please? Thank you.
Okay, my question to the first speaker is, I want to know the nexus, the connection between Ubuntu and that of transhumanism. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Before the speakers will answer this question, Mogaji, please unmute yourself and ask your question. It seems like Mugaji.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, ma'am. My name is Mogaji. So my question is very, very clear. While the speaker was presenting, he made mention of we need to take control of nature's evolutionary process for transhumanism to be possible. So my question is that if we should take control of nature's evolutionary process to ensure we actualize the goals of transhumanism, would there not be environmental issues and whereby other organisms in the environment tend to face the repercussion of we trying to make our own life more better, improving the condition of human being, and then at the detriment of other organisms' well-being, which happens to be that other organisms and humans itself, we complement each other to survive. So would taking control of nature's evolutionary process not bore further environmental issues? That's my question.
Okay, thank you. Emmanuel, please unmute yourself and ask your question or make your contribution. Thank you.
Good afternoon, ma'am. Hello, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. We can hear you perfectly well.
Thank you so much. I want to thank the speaker for this wonderful presentation. My question is similar to the one first asked. What is the theological implications of this transhumanism? Is it in any way similar to what Ignatius called the Superman? And if this present humanism is surpassed, what is the goal? What is the moral or ethical implications of such an idea? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Before we take your question and comments, Jimmy, please, the speakers, you can respond. Maybe we'll start with Mr. Abdul. Please give your response to the questions. Thank you.
All right. Thank you for the questions. Again, to respond to the first comments from the audience, like I said, when you want to talk about an idea, you ask what those who propounded the idea are saying, not what those responding to the idea, characterize the ideas. Now, if Fukuyama says this is about perfection, but then those who articulated the idea maintain that they simply seek is continual improvement. And that is one characteristic of, let's say, our species as humans. We've always wanted to improve. We've always wanted to be better, all right? It's part of why we were never contented remaining in caves or on trees. Okay, so some will say to be human is to be transhuman. It's still that continual drive for improvement, but it doesn't get to a point where you say, okay, we've reached the final perfect stage and then we stop here. No, there is no, as far as transhumanists are concerned, there is no end point or any perfection to this thing. It is just keep repairing what is not right or keep improving what you already have to make it better. Okay, so always seeking something better, but not to get to a point, a final point of perfection. Your second question about theological significance of transhumanism. Yes, transhumanists are accused of trying to play God. It's something that's very, very popular out there. Transhumanists are trying to play God. But then this, again, it's an allegation from outside, all right? What transhumanists are simply saying is, if humans wanted to remain at the whims and caprices of nature, then we wouldn't have done anything. We wouldn't have sought to come up with modern medicine or even invent agriculture, okay? Or much of what we do, which we now call artificial. Humans just feel there are gaps where we could take control of our destiny, all right? So it is not playing God as far as transhumanists are concerned. But then, of course, eventually the consequences may lead to a point where it seems like humans are trying to encroach into boundaries that are traditionally left or reserved for a divine power or divine control. Now, what will eventually happen from this, and it's already happening, is that almost all the world religions will have a transhumanist wing and a bioconservative wing. Why I say this is, even in Christianity now, you have the Christian Transhumanist Association. those who believe it is still part of our God-given mandate to take control. And these are Christians who are transhumanists. There are Mormon transhumanists, there are Buddhist transhumanists, all right? But then within the same religions, we have those who are against transhumanism, who are the bioconservatives. So it will get to a point where much of the world religions will have these different camps within themselves. Those who feel transhumanism is still in line with God-given mandates, all right? Some days who will say God has even finished his work and has left everything to humans to continue as co-creators, all right? So there will be those who within religion, those who will be for pro-transhumanism or pro-enhancement, and those who will be against. And then among transhumanists too, even though majority are from the secularists, atheists, agnostic, free-thinking worldviews, you also have transhumanists who are religious, who are Christians, Buddhists, Mormons, and the likes. So transhumanism itself, it's going to be very open to different religious interpretations, and you will have those from religion who will accept it and those who will keep kicking against it. But on its own, it is just a philosophy that seeks the continual improvement of the human condition. The final question about environmental implications. Yes, I would say initially, many transhumanists never really took that into recourse, and I know some transhumanists today who are still not so much bought over by this talk about climate change. But then the more serious, the more reflective ones are beginning to integrate ecological concerns into transhumanism. And as such, there's something today called techno-Gaianism, okay? From the idea of Gaia or Gaianism, there's this notion that you can have a techno-Gaianism where you can even use technology to further preserve and promote the environment instead of destroying it. All right, that keys into what is called bright green environmentalism, not the dark green one, which is all about jettisoning technology for the sake of the environment. Bright green environmentalism says you can use technology to preserve and promote the environment. And we see it today happening through use of biotechnology, nanotechnology, solar energy, wind energy, and all sorts of technological innovations which do not harm the environment, but even further enhances it, clean energy and all that, clean tech. So transhumanists are also supporters of this new emerging green technological space in trying to carry both the prospects of human enhancement and environmental protection hand in hand. So it's something that transhumanists have talked about, and some of them are on board what they call techno-Gaianism or bright green environmentalism, which is the notion that technology doesn't necessarily lead to harming of the environment, but technology can also still be used to even protect and enhance the environment.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Abdul. Please try to keep your response very brief so that we can accommodate as many contributions as possible. Okay, before I call on Professor Jim, I would like to read out a question here for you. I don't know who is actually directed to, but any of the speakers could answer that. The person asks, is there a link between transhumanism and the fourth industrial revolution? So Professor Jim, please unmute yourself and ask your question or make your comment. Thank you.
Yeah, good day, ladies and gentlemen. Let me say that enamored by the kind of thing that is going on in this colloquium that you have organized. I see that there is a beautiful development in the philosophy. I see transhumanism as an attempt to make philosophy contemporaneous with developments in science and technology, which I think is beautiful. But equally, I would like to know the connect between existential ontology, existential phenomenology, for instance, with transhumanism. And I also need you to see, especially the speaker, they call Mr. Adu, when he discussed singularity, whether there is a relationship between that and the ancient artist tyrant or the Superman of Nietzsche, the man that is evolving as the superhero, the super ethician. I see that as connecting singularity. So the point I'm making here is that what is going on is beautiful, but I need some of the speakers to be able to connect the ancestry of transhumanism and these humanisms that are developing in philosophy, so that your activities will be deemed to be thoroughly, properly historical. You know, a historical account of philosophy is to take it to where it is coming from. With all the things said by Abdul about continual innovation, freedom, and so on and so forth, are simple vocabularies of postmodernism, which is a development from existential ontology. So I need some of the speakers, not all of them, to be able to make a connect between the past and what you guys are doing, which I think is beautiful. So what is the connect between existential phenomenology and transhumanism?
Thank you, Prof, for your question. Mr. Abdul, please keep your response very brief so that we can go to the next lecture.
I'll try and do that now. Okay, so for the connection, sometimes it depends on the tradition the transhumanist is coming from. So yesterday we had Prof. Stefan Lawrence Sorgner with us here, and one of his earliest articles was titled Nietzsche, the Overhuman and the Transhuman. He is one of those who have been trying to draw that connection between Nietzsche and transhumanism. Some transhumanists like Nick Bostrom will disagree and say the origin of transhumanist thought of freedom goes back to the likes of G.S. Mill, his book on liberty. But Nietzsche, Stefan and even Max Moore are what you may call Nietzschean transhumanists. They agree that especially in terms of morality, some of the visions of transhumanism are in line with Nietzsche's thoughts, existentialism, and existentialism again, because in existentialism, we get this notion of existence preceding essence, that there is no human essence, which is part of how some transhumanists were able to go over this thought of a fixed human nature, all right? But that the human first exists, surges up in the world, and then defines himself, which is what transhumanism is also saying. We define ourselves, not that there is a fixed human nature that has been here before we came and we have to stick to it. So such links are there. It's just for sake of time and within the context of our discussion, that's why I can't branch off into them. But thank you, Prof, for raising that up.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Abdul. Before I call up the next speaker, there is a point I would also want us to take into consideration is the idea of posthumanism in transhumanism. One of the recent books written by Sona titled We Have All Been Cyborgs, he made it very clear just in other books too, even the one written by Max Moore and Newton Lee and Vita Moore. They made it clear that the central goal of transhumanism is posthumanism, like for us to be posthumans. And what is this posthumans we are talking about? A posthuman is someone that has greater capacities, abilities, other than that of humans. So a posthuman is more than human. And if we consider that within, consider the concept of perfection within this context, we will start to see that maybe one of the goals of transhumanism is actually to make us perfect beings. But that being said, that will always be a point of disagreement between the different proponents of transhumanism. Okay, I would like to